Hello again. We are Chris Lee and Chase Robinson of Southeastern 16 here to preview the Tennessee Vols for the 2024 football season. Chase, interesting time for the Vols. Josh Heupel had Tennessee well ahead of schedule in year one and year two. Last year, a little bit of a step back, but still not a bad season at all. This is a coach who's had a run of success that we hadn't seen in Knoxville in a while. They have utilized the portal very well. They've got a very interesting talent at quarterback. And I think Tennessee fans very excited for the start of the 2024 season, and I think rightfully so.
I think rightfully so as well. I mean, and you mentioned it, you think back to 2022, that was kind of their magical year. I mean, they go 11-2, got some really big wins in there, including a win at home against Alabama. And, but then last year under Joe Milton, things just weren't like they were in 2022 under Hendon Hooker. And so I think last year you could call it a disappointment for Tennessee fans, not quite what they wanted, but I think they're on track to have a better year. I'm interested to see how it goes. Some new faces, a new quarterback that everybody seems to be very excited about in Nico Iamaleava. And so, I mean, there's a lot I think Tennessee fans have to be excited about. And when you look up and down the roster, as we will, and look at both sides of the ball, I think there's some really bright spots and of course, some questions as well as we record this year in mid-July. And so, I think they're trying to reverse what they saw last year and go back to 2022. And I think this roster, perhaps could do that.
Yeah, spoiler alert. A lot of what Josh Heupel wants to do starts with quarterback play, and that's going to be a big topic on this preview today. All right. Our content is sponsored by BetOnline, your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in UFC and MMA and boxing, every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads. While the games are being played, when the game is over, head over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus, or your free bet credit, that is, on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online. The game starts here. All right, well, things with Josh Heupel's offenses, if we have said, start with the quarterback play. Hendon Hooker 2 years ago was playing at a Heisman Trophy level of production. Last year, Joe Milton, not at that level, had a decent season, but not what Tennessee fans had come to expect. And, of course, now it is the turnover to the new guy. I'll let you pronounce his name. I still get tongue-tied over it, but certainly a name that I think we will all have on our mind in this college football season, in one of the most eagerly anticipated quarterback eras in Knoxville, maybe since Peyton Manning.
Yeah, Nico Iamaleava. I mean, I think a lot of folks will know how to say that by the end of the season. It kind of reminds me of Tua Tagovailoa. A lot of folks didn't know how to say that before he started playing in Alabama, and we know how that ended up. So I think everyone will be able to say Iamaleava by the end of this all. But yeah, he's there's so much excitement around him, and so we got to see him in the Citrus Bowl. And he was the MVP of the Citrus Bowl. And I think he is the guy that can get them more back to that 2022 team that we talked about, that Tennessee fans want to see. And I'm interested to see, though, how it works out. I mean, you look back, 2022 was Hendon Hooker, like you said. Last year was Joe Milton. Now you move to Nico. So that's 3 quarterbacks in as many years. And so will the lack of consistency at that position, how will that affect this team? And I know there's some guys back on offense, especially the receiver position that I know that it's going to be good that Nico has been on the roster. They've played a bowl game with him. So I think that'll help. But, 3 quarterbacks in 3 years, we'll see how that affects him. But, I'm excited to see what Nico brings, just with all the excitement that is around him in the preseason. Does he live up to that? Obviously I think he's a very good quarterback. but I also think it's the year of the quarterbacks in the SEC. We're going to see a lot of good quarterbacks.
Yeah, I don't know what the production is going to look like. I mean, you kind of always bet on a quarterback in Josh Heupel's system if he's got talent. I mean, I guess you can say Joe Milton, maybe not, but there were flaws evident with Joe Milton long before last year. It just best case scenario that people were hoping for just did not come to fruition. I mean, super talented kid. He's big. He can do a little bit of everything. And I think one of the things I look for is leadership. That could have been a kid who came in and splintered that locker room a year ago. Everything I've heard behind the scenes was he was a model citizen and handled the thing really well with Milton. And so I think, you obviously look for leadership out of your quarterback spot. And I think he has passed just so many tests so far in Knoxville with flying colors on and off the field. My question is, boy, what happens if he gets hurt, Chase?
That's the $1 million question. I feel like it's not a deep quarterback room. I think the fans were excited from what they saw from Jake Merklinger in the spring game. 105 yards, threw for a touchdown, ran for a touchdown. He seems to be kind of a dual threat guy as well. And so I think the fans like what they saw from him, but he's not Nico, and Gaston Moore, who understands the offense. He's been with Josh Heupel, previously at UCF, and now he's at Tennessee. And so he understands the offense, but he also is not a quarterback like Nico. So the room's not very deep. That's a concern. And, I think a team like Tennessee, it kind of all starts at the quarterback. They do have other good skill guys, and we'll get to those as we move on. But, that's a concern to me about this Tennessee team. And you always want to have a good backup. And I think they do have good backups, but it's not at the level that they have in their starter in Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah, most places are listing Gaston Moore as the backup as we do this in mid-July. He's a walk-on who's been there for a bit. And I mean, who knows what he can or can't do, but certainly a huge drop-off. You would think if there is an injury situation there, and any hope there's not, obviously. But let's talk about injuries. A lot of times are related to a team's ability to protect a guy. And I think Tennessee has really built a lot of depth, and really with the transfer portal, some top-end talent too among the guys challenged with protecting Nico.
Yeah, I think they've done a really good job of building the offensive line. And obviously when you have a good quarterback, you want them to have protection. You want them to be able to do their job. Nico is a great dual threat quarterback. He can throw when he has time. He can run. And so, yeah, you got to build your offensive line to give him the opportunity to do what he does best. And so, yeah, I think they've done a really good job of putting some pieces in. They've got, it's 3 of their starters I know on the offensive line that are back, and they've added pieces in there as well. So I think that could be a really bright spot for Tennessee this year to go along with impressive quarterback play is that offensive line. And I think that'll go a long way for Tennessee this year.
Yeah, just some guys to look out for. Lance Hurd expected to man left tackle. He transferred from LSU after a season. And of course, he was behind 2 first-round tackles there. He was a 5-star recruit by most services, a national top 25 player by composite rankings. So that's a huge get for the Vols. At tackle, they've got a ton of experience on the right side. John Campbell, their starter, class of 2018. Dane Davis, his backup, a walk-on who's actually been an SEC Player of the Year, player or Offensive Lineman of the Week is what I meant to say on one occasion. Class of 2019. Cooper Mays, class of 2020. He's man center there for a while. Spraggins and Karic at the guards have played a lot of ball. They were both class of 2020 guys, and you just look up down the roster, there's a lot of old guys. And this is going to be a theme that emerges on defense too. Just a lot of guys that have played football in big spots or little spots here and there over time. And I don't know what Tennessee's, if you could rank experience or games played along the offensive line, but I would think this team would have to be up there nationally, maybe top 10 or 20 in terms of just games that these guys have played.
And that goes a long way. It doesn't matter, what the team, what team it is. If you've got guys who've played a lot of games, who've played a lot of snaps, then you're going to be better because experience makes you better. And so, yeah, I mean, it's got to be up there because they've got a lot of guys who've played a lot of big games. And so I think that'll definitely help Tennessee this year. But having experience, having veteran guys to lead your team, that's what good team, when you see a good team, is most likely because a lot of these guys have played a lot of football, and I think that will definitely play into success for Tennessee this year. Yeah, based on all these guys who played a lot of games.
Chase, what do we think about the skill positions at Tennessee? I don't know that there's a Bolitnikoff guy in here, but certainly Tennessee has had a nice collection of athletes between its running backs, receivers, and tight ends. Added maybe the top tight end in the portal, according to some. Added a 5-star receiver in Mike Matthews, who I think figures to compete for some time, and then some veterans, Brew McCoy, Donte Thornton. There's some guys here again. Now, don't know if there's a superstar, but there's a lot of guys. And again, one of the themes of Josh Heupel's tenure in Knoxville has been collecting depth and experience. And again, another spot where it feels like the Vols have got that.
Yeah, I think so. I really like their receiving room. Brew McCoy, who was out on who's battled some injury, but he'll be back this year. Squirrel White was a guy you saw his name a lot last year. Maybe not, you know, scoring touchdowns all the time, but he came in clutch for Tennessee quite a bit. And so, yeah, if you just get a number of guys who can make catches, who can stay fresh, I think that's really big. Especially when you have a quarterback, a good quarterback like Tennessee does. So the deep receiver room, I think, is going to be a great spot for Tennessee this year. I think that will help them out a lot, being able to spread it out a little bit and utilize all these guys. You mentioned Donte Thornton, Chris Brazzell, Mike Matthews, who they brought in, a new recruit. And so, then utilizing the tight end position, I think could be big for Tennessee this year, and get some of those guys in there as they have a couple transfers into the tight end room. But yeah, I like what I see when I see the receivers, and I think they go along really well with Nico at quarterback. And we know Josh Heupel, great offensive mind, really creative on offense. And so when you pair Josh Heupel with a really good quarterback and then a deep receiver room, that's dangerous. That's what wins games for Tennessee. And I think that'll definitely be the case from the receivers. And I like the running backs as well. Dylan Sampson, he last year averaged a little over 5.5 yards per game, 8 touchdowns, which was a team high last year for Tennessee. So I like Sampson and what he brings back. And then Cam Seldon as well. Then they brought in Peyton Lewis, new recruit there into Knoxville, and I think he'll see significant time here to start. But I like Dylan Sampson. Match him with all the receivers and Nico. I like what the offense is bringing this year. I think they can put up some high numbers this year.
Yeah, Sampson has split time with other guys. Again, Tennessee's had a lot of balance on its offensive attack, but career numbers for that guy: 164 carries, 1,001 yards, 13 touchdowns, 6.1 per carry. And then this is kind of impressive too. Averaged about 10 yards a catch on 20 receptions over his career. You don't see a lot of running backs average 10 yards a catch. That is a guy that I'd be very interested to see what the numbers look like if say, he got 250 touches this year. Feels like that might be an all-conference back that the Vols would have if he gets the volume of work.
Yeah, and you mentioned he's had a share time in the past, and so I think it's kind of his year to break out. Be looking for a big year from Dylan Sampson, because I think it's definitely coming. And so I'm excited to see what he could do. But yeah, he fits well into this offense, and it's always good to have a guy who can a pass catcher as well, who can come out of the backfield. And that's definitely Sampson. I think he'll work well with Nico.
Chase, the defense is interesting. In our pre-show prep, we both kind of commented it's hard to know what to make of this bunch, because you've got a first-team All-American and a potential 1-1 guy in the NFL draft next year in James Pierce Jr., who's a superstar and an edge guy, and that's always a great start. But you start looking at the production last year, which was again, their defense has been really solid the last couple of years. It goes overlooked in the gaudy offensive numbers that they put up. But on one hand, Tennessee lost a ton of the guys. Like if you start going from the top of the stat sheet and the tackle list, most of those guys are gone. Other than Pierce, who didn't have a lot of tackles, but when he had them, they were big. You know, he lost a couple key guys in the secondary, but you go down the list, and one of the advantages of just blowing teams out like Josh Heupel's offenses have done is you get to play a lot of guys. So it's this odd combination of guys that have played a lot of bit roles, but maybe not a lot of guys who've started. I think they've got 3 returning starters in terms of being a starter at Tennessee. Now, if you want to go to the transfer portal, Jermod McCoy and Jacoby Thomas were both starters at Oregon State and MTSU respectively, but that kind of makes it really hard to know what to think of this defense. I'm not saying they're going to be bad. I'm just saying there's a lot of questions because we've not seen these guys in roles that they're going to be asked to play this year.
Yeah, last year in the regular season, they allowed 22 points per game, 349 yards per game. They did a good job of limiting a lot of teams and keeping them out of the end zone. But yeah, they've lost. They lost a lot of guys. Now they retained some and brought some in, but I think they're solid up front. Defensive backs, I think, is where it's going to be a struggle. They lost all 7 from last year, and so they're really having to kind of rebuild that area. And so that specific unit of defensive backs, maybe that's a cause for concern. But it's hard to know. It's hard to make just looking up and down the roster of what to make of this defense and how they will be. I think they need to be good. They need to start the season out well. When you look up and down the schedule and what they have to face. And so, your first thoughts when you glance at the roster before you really get into looking at all these guys, there are a lot of questions on how are they going to replace these guys and what will they look like on defense.
Yeah, I think probably their strong suit is the defensive line. They've got Amari Thomas back, Pierce, Bryson Eason back to start. They do have some beef up front. You look at the tackles between Thomas, Elijah Simmons, Eason, Omar Norman Lott, Jackson Moy, that's Stanford transfer, all guys that are 305 north of that in terms of weight. They've got a big end in Ty West on the other side who's been there for a couple years already and played a lot. So I think probably if you're looking at strong suits, that's where it starts for Tennessee on defense.
Yeah, and I like James Pierce. I mean, 10 sacks last year. He can get through there and get around pretty quick. 6'5", 243. He's played a lot of football games. I think that he will be definitely a bright spot on this defense. So look for James Pierce to continue making noise, especially wreaking havoc back in the backfield for their opponents. But yeah, I like the defensive front. I think that may be the strongest position on the defense right now, and that's good. I mean, it's good to have a strong defensive line, and that's what they're working towards. But yeah, I really like these guys. Amari Thomas, like you mentioned, and Bryson Eason as well. Those are veteran guys that have played a lot of football, and you're going to be able to see that, I think, this year.
Linebacker, you got some guys there with talent. Arian Carter was a pretty highly rated high school kid, consensus 4-star. Again, another spot where a guy that's got some talent is going to move into a bigger role, and we'll see how that handles. Keenan Peely, who's class of 2016. How many class of 2016 guys do we have in college football? Probably not a lot. Of course, that's a special situation. He was a BYU transfer. Had, I think, the Mormon mission situation, then got hurt last year in the opener. He would have been a big part of what they did. So you've got some guys in the backups. T-Lander, Caleb Perry, each played 13 games a year ago, again, in backup roles. But, it's an asset when you got guys that know where they need to be, and Tennessee's got a lot of those guys in that linebacker core.
Yeah, I think Peely is a guy to watch because he was out on injury. We didn't see much of him, and so he's back. I think just from what I've read and have been hearing, like he's back. Like he's back to what they've kind of been looking for out of him, and so I think him coming back in is going to be huge, and having his presence there in that middle linebacker position, I think will be very good. And so having him back is definitely a bright spot. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these guys play out. I just from what I've read, Tim Banks, defensive coordinator, likes kind of what he's seen so far, likes where these guys are at, and sees a bright future for them, barring if they can stay healthy, which really is from everybody. So I'm interested to see from the guys they've lost to the guys they have now, what the difference is when you look at last year's tape to this year's tape, and I think it'll be better. I think from what I saw in the spring and kind of the Pacers setting right now, I think we could see a pretty good unit.
And in the secondary, Tennessee really hit the portal hard. Lost a couple guys in the portal, brought in 3 guys who started other places last year. I'll be interested to see on net what this brings for them.
Yeah, that will definitely be interesting to see. And again, you're going to lose guys every year. You're going to go get guys out of the portal every year. But it's how they fit, I think, with the team, with the rest of the guys, is what is interesting to me. Is what kind of fit are they? Are you just going out to get guys because you need numbers, or do they fit your program well? I think a lot of these guys do fit Tennessee well, and their scheme and what they're trying to do.
Yeah, Jacoby Thomas from MTSU starred there. Jermod McCoy at Oregon State started 5 games a year ago. Had a couple of picks, 7 breakups. Very productive starting half the season. Was not highly rated out of high school. And again, you look at guys who've played a lot before, not necessarily in starting roles, but Andre Turrentine. Will Brooks has played some at safety, played all games last year. John Slaughter, same thing, although a lot of that was special teams. Again, not guys that are stars, but guys that have played a lot. Jordan Thomas at the star position, 12 games a year ago. Again, that is one thing Josh Heupel's done very well, is get guys experience in spots. And so we'll see if that pays off for the Vols this year. Anything else of note? I know that Tennessee lost a major player in the return game. New kicker, Jackson Ross, back as punter. Anything on special teams or any notes as we wrap up our preview on the Vols here, Chase?
Yeah, I mean, they you look in recent history, and their special teams has been really good, especially kicking the ball, and I think that will continue. Even with a new kicker, I think they'll still get the job done. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about this Tennessee team, Chris. I mean, it's still, there's a lot of questions, and anytime, and I'm not going to say that the whole season hangs on the play of the quarterback, but you've got to think that's a big part of this season is the play of the quarterback. It was in 22 with Hendon Hooker. He had a phenomenal special year, but you got to think that kind of Nico is going to set the tone for how the year goes for Tennessee. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. And I think Tennessee is going to have a good year this year. SEC is going to be really good. You look up and down their schedule, it's going to be tough. They'll be going to Oklahoma, which I think is a huge SEC opener for them. They'll go to Georgia. They've got Alabama coming. They got Florida coming to Knoxville. Kentucky, Mississippi State coming to Knoxville as well. They also have NC State week 2 in Charlotte, which I think is that's going to be a game to watch. You would think back to Tennessee, North Carolina State. That sounds like a winnable game for Tennessee. It's not going to be easy. North Carolina State, a good program, probably a top 25 team. So I'm excited to see that one. I think we'll learn a lot right off the bat about Tennessee and what they're bringing. But I think there's a lot of reason to be excited in Knoxville this year if you're a Tennessee fan.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of unknowns. Again, a lot of guys that have played ball, but we just don't know how they're going to do. And I think the quarterback position, again, a key, because if he is a superstar, people think they are, and things are solid everywhere else, this could be a playoff team. If something happens where he gets hurt and guys don't step up and respond to bigger roles, we're looking at a whole different scenario. We have not previewed most of the teams yet. I think Tennessee's the second team we've done so far. And so it's hard to say with certainty until you have compared them against everybody else. But it feels like this is a team where you can make a case, Chase, based on what it looks like on those extremes. This could be one of the most variable teams in the league in terms of the range of how good it could be, or maybe on the other end, maybe just an okay team.
Yeah, and I think back to 2022, and as when SEC Media Days was going on, and I was talking to a lot of people there, and there was quite a few that were saying this is a 10-2 Tennessee team. Like they're legit, they're for real. Watch out for Tennessee. That was mid-July of 2022. We know what happened. They finished the season 11-2 with that. And including a win over Alabama. But last year there was some talk. This year, talk is picking up as well. And so I'm interested to see, do they live up to that hype like they did in 2022? They lived up to that. There's no doubt about it. Like people were saying this is a good team, and they were. So I'm interested to see, do they live up to the hype? I haven't seen, people say, hey, this is a 10-2 team. But the SEC is much different than it was in 2022 now. And so, I think a lot could be said for that, but I do think this is going to be a good Tennessee team, and I'm interested to watch them. Interested to see if this offense is as high flying as I think they definitely potentially can be.
Yeah, when in doubt, I feel like the play is to bet on Josh Heupel to get the most out of his team, because that's basically what he's done since he's been in Knoxville.
Yeah, and that's definitely true, and I think he is a great fit at Tennessee, and will definitely. I don't think you'll see many losing Josh Heupel teams. He's going to have a winning record. That's just what he does. He wins ball games. And so, I think when he's on the sideline coaching this Tennessee team, they're going to be successful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like this is a pretty high floor program going forward. I don't think you'll see the ebbs of Butch Jones or Derek Dooley or some of those guys, especially with what they've done in the NL space. It feels like Tennessee's just been ahead of the game in terms of most of the field with that. And I think that's a credit to their athletic leadership and their athletic director.
Yeah, for sure. And Heupel has got them back to where they wanted to be, and that was relevant. Yeah. Tennessee is a very relevant program now, and they weren't for a long time. And so I think the fan base is excited, and it makes college football better when a team like Tennessee is playing the way they are.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be here to cover the Vols all season. We do football, baseball, and basketball at this channel. Like we say, if you want to know about your team, your local beat writer who's plugged in is always going to know more than we know. But if you want to know what's going on with 48 teams, that's the baseball, football, basketball teams across the SEC. I think if you're looking for a landing spot to compare and contrast to everybody else, you got your home here. So if you like it, please subscribe, leave us a thumbs up. That helps our rankings in Google and YouTube and all those things. Anyway, for Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 16, presented by Bet Online.